Okay. Well, storytellers and story listeners, welcome to the South Sound Story Guild February Story Swap. And tonight we're excited because we have some students from the Evergreen State College who are here who will be telling stories tonight, Mattie and Leo, and a couple others who are here to just listen. So what we usually do is we start off with an opening teller, and then we have a featured teller during the first hour. And then once they've warmed everybody up in the second hour, we'll take a small break, and then we'll get back together, and we'll go through the people who signed up for the story swap. Now, if there's anybody in the virtual realm who would like to tell a story, please put it in your chat box at the break. And what we'd like to ask you also to do is please turn your cameras on if you can, so we can at least see your faces and get some interaction back and forth, and make sure you're muted. With that, we'll get the ball rolling. And so tonight, our opening storyteller is Jerry Buendel. So I just have to say, Jerry and I served in the Air Force together for a number of years, and we've got a lot of stories that we don't tell about each other. So we're rolling on to the story tonight. Our theme is love in all the different ways. And Jerry's going to be our opening teller with a couple of stories from the Cherokee Nation. Jerry?
What a way to start.
Better be good, huh?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, my stories tonight come from the Cherokee Book of Tales, and they are love stories, but there's a little bit more to them than love. The first story that I'm going to tell you about is how two people came together and came to fall in love, but there was a serious consequence for the person that helped them fall in love. So there's two tales to listen to here in this one. There was this beautiful young woman in the Cherokee village, and all of the young men just so admired her, and they desired her to have her as their wife. And the old young braves, they came courting. One brave would bring the very finest cuts of venison. Another one brought a beautiful bearskin hide to this, and they all had their tales to tell about how wonderful they were, how strong, how brave, what good providers they would be. But he took no interest in these people. He had no interest at all in these brave, beautiful, handsome young men. And her mother was very concerned about that. But there was one young man in the village. He was very shy, very average. He was unremarkable, but a confident young man. And he loved her. He just was smitten by this woman, and he just had to have her for his wife. So he was so shy that he wouldn't even come near her during the tribal gatherings. He was trying to figure, how can I get her attention? How can I finally get her to be my wife? So he goes to one of the medicine men and says, "Can you help me?" He explains the situation and tells him how in love he is. And the medicine man says, "Well, there's a potion, and drink it before you see her next time, and she'll be attracted." So before one of the gatherings, he drinks the potion. He makes his way over. He makes eye contact with the young woman, but she gives him an icy stare. And he swears he saw some disgust in her stare. He was so disappointed and very discouraged, and he went away completely downtrodden. He thought, there's another medicine man in the village. Maybe he knows more. Maybe he has a different set of things that he can help me with. So he goes to the other medicine man, and he talks with him and explains. And the medicine man tells him things that he can do, maybe some behaviors that he can exhibit while he's talking with her and the like. And he too prepares a potion and says, "This will work. Drink this potion and do the things that I told you to do." So again, before one of the gatherings, he drinks the potion. He makes his way over next to the young lady. And again, no interest. He looks at her, and he swears that she looks at him with disgust and says, "Stay away," was how he read her looks. He was very discouraged, so discouraged. He went down by the river that evening and sat. Then he started crying and moaning, just trying to figure out a situation. Up comes from the side comes a small furry creature. The furry creature was a mole. The mole told him, "I can help you." Oh, the boy looks at him. "You're a small animal. How can you help me?" The mole says, trust me, I have some magical powers and I can help you. The young man thought for a bit. Well, I have nothing to lose, everything to gain. I so desperately want the attention of this young woman. So he asked the mole, well, what should we do? The mole said, there'll be a full moon in 2 nights. We'll be here at midnight. But first, you need to tell me where this young woman lives. So he points out the home that she lives in, exactly where she stays. And so that night, when the night started, the mole makes his way down, tunnels slowly, steadily, and coming up underground exactly where the young woman is laying. Then he uses his magical powers to go inside the young woman. He takes a small piece of her heart and he exits. He makes his way down and he goes back through the tunnel. At just about midnight, he reaches the end. As he comes up, there's the young man, all excited, ready to see. The mole, really? Does he have these magical powers? The mole takes this little bit of heart, he offers it to the young man. He says, take this and eat it. And then she will be pursuing you. She will be seeking you out as the love of her life. The young man was a bit skeptical, but he ate a bit of heart anyway. He went back to his home, went to bed, thinking, dreaming, and wondering, does magic work? Well, the next morning, the young lady wakes up in the morning and she says she feels different. And she told her mother, I'm not sure if I'm feeling sick or exactly what is going on with me. And her mother counseled her, just go about your day, and if you're still not feeling well, we'll go to the medicine men. Maybe they can help you. Well, as she starts down the path to do her morning chores, the young man's coming from another direction, and they meet at the pathway. And all of a sudden, she starts feeling happiness. She wonders, well, what? My goodness, I'm feeling very good. And for the first time, she acknowledges the young man, and she speaks to him and asks him, well, what are you doing today? He explains that he's going to go out in the fields and do his work. She said, well, can I come with you? He said, quite surprised and quite encouraged. And he said, well, certainly. So they spend some time out together, and they talk, and they discover they have so many things in common. And the more she talks to him, the more she falls in love with him. And finally, she does a very unusual thing for a Cherokee woman. She asks him to marry her. You can imagine the happiness of this. Well, they go to the village. They work with their parents and the village seniors, the village elders, and arrange a wonderful wedding. They have the wedding, and they're so happy together. But the young braves in the village, they wonder, how is it that this unremarkable boy manages to have the prettiest girl in the village to seek after him and marry her? And they thought, they attributed, well, it must be the fickleness of the young woman. But the medicine men who tried to help him, they too wanted to know, what is so special here? They go over and they talk to the young man, and he says, well, it wasn't the potion that you gave me, and it wasn't the potion and the advice that you gave me. He said, it's this mole, a mole that lives down by the river. The medicine men, they were quite taken by that. Only they had magical powers. Only they could deal with the spiritual and love affairs of the people in the village. It was only their right, and they were very angry. So after the services, after the wedding, the ceremony, the medicine men go back to their tents. They get their clubs and their spears and make their way down to the river. They're looking for this mole with his very keen hearing. Hears them coming. He can feel the anger. As they get closer, you can see the anger and the hatred in their faces, and he knows they've come to do him harm. The mole goes back into his cave, and there he's safe. And to this day, Mole and his descendants continue to live under the ground, safe from the fear of people. All right. Well, my My second story is also a bit of a love story, but there's already been a marriage. And in this marriage, there's some problems. But the solution to the problem also turns out to be quite a happy thing for not only the couple, but for all of the rest of us. So, first man and first woman, they were joined and they were very happily married. They lived in a place where they had everything that they needed: fresh water, abundant game, all the food that they could eat, wonderful materials to build a nice home, and everything was wonderful. They enjoyed each other's company until the first quarrel. He turned to her and says, "Why don't you ever cook the things that I like to eat?" "Wood, so the firewood will last through the night." He didn't. He took offense at that. He said, "Well, why don't you tidy up our home? It's always a mess." He turned to him, "Well, why are you so sloppy? You bring in all sorts of things, you scatter them about, and there's no way that I can keep up with you." So all of these complaints eventually led to insults, back and forth. And the more they argued, the angrier she got, and very angry. And she decided towards the end of the quarrel, "I'm not living with this man anymore. I'll be leaving in the morning." Eventually they settle down and they go to bed. The next morning, she wakes up just before the sun rises, and she takes off. She takes off on a path down to the west, out of the village. First man, he wakes up, he notices, his wife isn't present, but her bed is still warm, so she hasn't gone very far. She'll be back soon. He wakes up, goes about doing his chores. The day goes on, some morning goes on, the sun rises higher. He becomes very concerned. He misses her, and he's worried about her. The sun looks down on him and sees this worried look on his face and wonders. And he asks the man, "What is it that makes you so unhappy?" He said, "Well, my wife, she's left me." And the son said, "Well, do you still love her? Would you like her back?" "Would you like my help?" "Oh, indeed, anything you can do to help to bring my wife back. I love this woman." The son looks down on him and says, "Well, follow the trail that she's gone down, and I'll go ahead and see what I can do to slow her down so that you can catch up to her." The son looks down, he finds where she is, just a little bit ahead of her. He shines down on her, and up springs these beautiful huckleberry bushes, wonderful ripe berries in great abundance, so easy to pick. He knows these are some of the things that she likes to have. But her anger is so deep and so driven, she walks right past the huckleberries, doesn't even notice. The son is concerned about this and thinks, I'll have to try something different. He looks ahead of her again. There. And he looks ahead and shines down, and up springs these beautiful blackberries. And the son knows blackberries. These are her favorite things. Surely she'll stop, and the first man can catch up with her there at the blackberry patch. But her anger is so deep, the words, they cut to the quick. She's not coming back. Those words just drove her to blindness. She walks through the blackberry groves, taking no notice, not breaking stride. The son thought, very special here, to try to get her attention. He thinks for a moment, then once again, ahead of her in the path, he shines his light down, and there has these low-growing plants, beautiful white flowers, nice fragrance, and underneath the leaves of the plants, these beautiful red berries. As he approaches, catches wind of the fragrance, the lovely fragrance of the strawberries. And she feels her heart start to soften. Her anger starts to subside. She gets too closer to the strawberry patch. She leans down and picks up one of the strawberries, takes a bite, then looks at it and notices that if she bit it in half, the strawberry has this beautiful heart shape. And it reminds her of her husband and the love that they have for each other. So she sits down and she gathers some more strawberries. And the more she eats, the more she misses them, and the more she wants to be with them. About that time, her husband comes. They smile, they apologize to each other. They gather a few strawberries, and they take some of the strawberry plants with them. And hand in hand, they walk back to their home and enjoy the life that they've always enjoyed. They take the strawberry plants, those plants, they plant them around their home to remind them that words have consequences. We should think carefully before we act, and that we should always be willing to forgive.
Thank you, Jerry. Very nice. Forgiveness. So let me just ask, is the Zoom working okay, Brett? As far as, can everybody hear us okay and everything?
I think so.
Haven't heard any bad remarks in the chat box.
We have 27 on Zoom.
Okay, wow. I guess, should I be talking now about sending in donations through PayPal, or can we do that later? So we'll do that later too. So we don't want to hit it with too many advertisements. So our featured teller tonight is Sandra, who's got a few stories to tell us. And I won't go into her background for those of you who don't know her, but Sandra's been a professor, a professional storyteller, and she came up from California. So you know she's really good. So we enjoy hearing her all the time. Sandra, please come on up and tell us a few stories.
I'm not sure what coming up from California has to do with.
You're imported.
Okay, there we go. These are loves.
The microphone down there.
Yes, please. Better?
I don't want to get flared.
Tanto mejor.
I don't want to get flared.
Okay, thank you. Love stories. Well, you know how many folk tales end with, and they lived happily ever after. You know, right, sure. That way. And sometimes getting even to the point of declaration can be a problem. I'll start in Scotland. Now I'm tempted to try a Scottish accent, but it tends to wander across the sea to Ireland, so I won't do it. There was a poor family that lived on a rocky croft, a very poor farm. And Angus, the father, only could really get any money together. He and his wife, Margaret, had one daughter, Mary, who they much loved. And Mary was a very good girl who would help her father out. She would help him bring in his nets when they were full, and she would take the fish to the market and sell them. And when her work was done at the farm, she would ask to borrow the boat. And then she would row out to a small 3-acre island that was no more than rocks and bushes. And she seemed to spend a great deal of time there. Now, they never worried about that. It wasn't far, and what could happen on an empty island? That was the situation until Margaret, the mother, one day was in the store and she heard 2 old biddies talking about her daughter. Something's not right, I tell you. Something's not right. That girl always going out to that island and never to a Keeley. You don't see her at any social occasions. Something's not right. Margaret didn't like her daughter gossiped about. So she went home. She said, Angus, find out what that girl is doing on the island. What is the problem? It's her time. She's probably out there reading a book or doing something like that. Angus, next time she goes, you go to your cousin Lockie and you borrow his boat and you follow her over there. Well, the next time was the next day. She'd no sooner headed off than she, Margaret, was on him, nagging him, and finally he says, fine. So he goes to his cousin and he says, may I borrow your boat? And the cousin says, oh, sit down and have a dram instead. What's wrong with your own boat? Nothing except Mary has it. Oh, she's out to the island again, is she? What do you know about it? Oh, I don't know anything about it, but leave her be. It will be fine. But Angus didn't want to go home without reporting on Mary. So he borrowed the boat, went over to the island. There was a small hillock in the center of the island over which he went. The pebbly beach below was a giant boulder, and on the other side of the boulder was laughter. So he crept out and he looked over. There was Mary, rolling about on the beach with a seal, a big gray seal, laughing her head off. He thought, well, she's been doing this for almost 4 years, coming out to this house. She must have seen that seal when it was no more than a pup. It's her friend, and they're having a good time, and better she's with a seal than some young man in the village lollygagging about. So he went home to Margaret and he said, no problem, she's with the seal. She's what? She's playing with what? You foolish guy. I'm telling you, it's a silky. It's a seal person. And they say, my Gran told me. And Gran always spoke the truth. She told me that silkies would take people away forever. Angus heard the story. He didn't like it at all. He too had heard of the silkies, but always thought they were just foolish tales. The next morning, though, his wife was at him when the dawn had not even broken. Go out to that island, Angus. Get rid of that seal. I'm telling you, if you don't get rid of the seal, he will take our daughter away. And she went on until at last he said, fine, I'll go. And he took his rifle, and he went to the boat, and he went out to the island and waited. Later, Mary got up, and she said, where's Dad? Oh, he's off setting his nets, said Margaret. Why don't you go and whitewash the byre, the cowshed? Strange request, but fine, she did it. And then she said, well, is Father back now? No, he's not. Well, I wonder if Cousin Locksley would let me borrow his boat. So she went and borrowed the boat of her cousin and went out to the island. And her father saw her coming, and he knew that his boat was there on the shore, but she pulled hers up right next to it. And he hid himself as best he could behind the bushes until she came over the hillock, went down to the beach, and there, sunning himself, was her friend, the great seal. And she laughed, and he began to play. And Angus rose up and shot him. He was so ashamed, so filled with sorrow for what he had done, and for the tears he saw his daughter shedding, that he just got back in his boat and rode home. And his wife said, have you taken care of the seal? He said, yes, but let us say no more of it. And where's Mary? Well, she's still on the island, but she'll come back. But by tea time she had not. By night time she had not. And they waited all the rest of their days, and Mary never returned. Stories, folk tales where there are matches that parents don't approve of are right common. I mean, think of Romeo and Juliet. But sometimes it can work out. And often in folk tales, what you have is a sort of trial period, tasks that have to be accomplished, as in this story from Bohemia, which is now part of Western Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, I should say. And it's called Clever Manka. There was a poor shepherd and a very well-to-do and rather unscrupulous farmer. And the farmer asked the shepherd if he could run some sheep with his own flock over the summer. And if he would do this, the rich farmer said that he would pay the shepherd a heifer at the end of the summer. But the summer came, the sheep were returned, and there was no heifer to be paid. Well, the shepherd thought, this will not do. And so he went into town and he asked for a decision to be made by the Burgermeister. Now, the Burgermeister was a young, college-educated fellow who thought he was very clever. And he said, I've heard your dispute, but I'll tell you, rather than just making a simple ruling, I will give you 3 riddles. And overnight to solve them. The one who comes back with the best answers will get the heifer. What is the swiftest thing? What is the sweetest thing? And what is the richest? The rich farmer stomped his way home, thinking, I don't know. So he asked his wife. And she said, oh, dear, that is so simple. It is our gray mare that is the swiftest. Nothing, no one can pass her on the road. And the sweetest? It's the honey from our hives. And the richest? Well, what could be richer than the golden ducats we have in that wooden chest? The farmer was well satisfied. And so he ate well and slept well and waited for the morrow. The shepherd, too, could think of no answers, but fortunately he had a very clever daughter named Manka, and she gave him some answers. The next morning, when they went to the Burgomaster, the rich farmer said, oh, the swiftest is my gray mare, the sweetest is my honey, the richest is the gold ducats in my wooden chest. And you, shepherd, what do you say? Oh, well, the swiftest thing is thought. It can fly to the moon and back before you can snap your fingers. The sweetest is sleep when you're tired or sad. And the richest is the earth itself, for out of the earth come all riches. The Burgomaster said, yes, those are the best answers. The heifer is yours. But as the shepherd was leaving, the Burgomaster said, excuse me, did you think of those answers yourself? And the shepherd had to admit that his clever daughter Manka had provided the answers. I would like to meet her, but I would like to give her another test. Take these 6 eggs. Give them to your daughter. Tell her to hatch them overnight and bring the chicks back to me tomorrow morning. He went home with the 6 eggs and he said to Manka, gotta hatch these overnight and they haven't been even warm. She said, oh, Father, don't worry. Here, take this millet. Yes, put it in your palm. take the millet back to the Burgermeister right now and say, very well, you plant the millet, you grow the millet, you harvest the millet, and then when I bring the chicks in, you'll be ready to feed them. Well, the Burgermeister laughed and said, sounds like you have a very clever daughter. Now, I'm looking for a wife, and I like a clever woman, but I also like a good-looking woman. Is your daughter good-looking? Oh, yes, sir, indeed. Then tell her to come to see me tomorrow. She must come when it's neither day nor night. She must come neither dressed nor undressed, and she must neither walk nor ride. Shepherd went home. He told his daughter the conditions of her meeting the Burgermeister, and she laughed and said, don't worry. And at dawn the next day, wrapped up in a fishing net, with one leg over the back of a goat and one leg on the ground, she went to the Burgermeister's house. Was she dressed? Not really. A fishing net is not clothing. Was she undressed? Well, no, not that either. Did she walk? Well, not exactly. One foot was on the ground, but did she ride? Well, no, not really. And the Burgermeister said, she's the woman for me. They met, they enjoyed each other, and just a few months later they were wed. And all went very well, but he kept on saying to her, Monka, I know you're clever, but listen, when there's a dispute that is brought to me, do not interfere. Not only would it be an embarrassment, but it would throw my authority into question, and that cannot be. And she agreed to this. And she didn't interfere until one day, two farmers came to solve a dispute. Now, both farmers had been in the marketplace that day, and one had brought a very pregnant mare. And while he was in the marketplace, that mare had foaled. And the young bull on wobbly legs had gone under a wagon. And the farmer who owned that wagon said the foal was his. Now, the Burgermeister was thinking of something else. At least I hope he was, because he said, obviously, the young bull belongs to the man with the wagon. Well, that farmer, as he walked out, went up to Manka and told her what her husband had decided, and she thought, oh, husband, oh dear. Farmer, this is what you must do. Now that afternoon, the Burgermeister happened to look out the window, and he saw the farmer throwing a fishing net across a dusty road and pulling it back, and throwing it out again and pulling it back. And at last he was so furious, and he said, what are you doing? Fishing. In a road? You can't catch fish in a road. Well, I'm as likely to catch fish in a road as it is for a wagon to foal. And the Burgermeister thought, oh, I have made such a mistake. And he did correct it. Then afterwards, he went to his wife and said, you were not to interfere, and I warned you of the consequences of your interference, and that was that you would be returned to your father's house. Go now. And she said, very well, husband, but we've been happy together. Couldn't we have a final meal together? I will cook your favorite dishes. We will talk, we will be kind to each other, and we shall part as friends. That sounds reasonable. And wanting to show that he was reasonable as well, the Burgermeister said, very well, and you may take your favorite thing from this house when you go back to your father's. So Mike agreed. He began to cook his favorite dishes. And he smelled the food and he thought, this deserves the finest wine. And he corked several bottles. And they ate and they drank and he ate and he ate and he drank and he drank and he fell asleep there right at the table. He told the servants to come, pick him up in his chair, and take him and her back to her father's house. And in the morning when they woke, the Burgermeister said, where am I? He says, you're at my father's house. You told me I could take my favorite thing, and you are my favorite. And he laughed and he said, oh, let's go home. And after that, there was no such clause put on the discussion. And after that, when he got a dispute he couldn't quite settle, he'd say, let's ask my wife. She's a very clever woman. So one way in the hereafter. And then the hereafter, lots of folk tales deal with this. Let's go rolling our way all the way back to ancient Greece and to the myth of Atalanta. And I have to give a tip of the hat or a whatever. Thank you very much to storyteller David Novak, who gave his permission to me to name the apples in this story. Atalanta was a Greek, but she was no goddess. She was a go-ahead, no impeding her forward momentum, no hesitation mortal, who had no roots. Her roots had been ripped from her at the moment of her birth. When her father, King Iasus, heard, another daughter, another dowry? I think not. Expose her under the cold crescent moon on top of the high Parthenian hill. And did her mother, Queen Clemene, simply turn her face in exhausted resignation to the wall and let her baby be taken? Or did she call out for the help and intercession of the gods? It must have been this. She called out to Artemis, protect born. And a familiar of Artemis, a giant she-bear, lumbered its way up the high Parthenian hill and scooped up the baby and took her back to a cave where she filled that child with the smell of earth and blood and milk, filled that child with fierce determination. One day, years later, a hunter saw a girl running through the forest. She ran like a gazelle, like the wind, and he thought, And he set out a net and caught her. And he brought Atalanta back to the village where he taught her to act like a human. But she was a go-ahead, no impeding her forward momentum, no hesitation, mortal who had no roots. But she ran like the wind. And her adoptive father said, I'll wager there's no one in all of Greece who can outrun Atalanta. Who will take my wager? And soon the sound of coins in his leather purse grew heavy and she ran with the big boys. Atalanta had the spear that brought down the Caledonian boar, and Atalanta went on board the Argos in search of the golden fleece. In time, word of Atalanta reached the ears of her old father, King Iasus. "Oh, my long-lost daughter! All my other children have died of disease or in battle. She must return to the palace and be the jewel in my old age." Well, Atalanta liked the idea of a palace, sleeping in lavender-scented linen sheets, but having her breasts bound, having her hair elaborately coiffed, no, those were barely acceptable. What was not acceptable was when King Iasus declared that she must marry and produce heirs, for she could not inherit the kingdom. She did not know what to do with that. She could not outrun that problem. So she went to the goddess of love, to Aphrodite, and begged her intercession. "Weren't you," asked Aphrodite, "the ward of my dear sister Artemis? The one who's always so disapproving of my little liaison? I think I would love to help you run to that. Let me whisper a plan in your shell idea." The next day, Atalanta went to King Iasus and said, "Father, you would not have our royal blood diluted with any lesser beings. I will marry, but only to a man who can outrun me. And should he not win, I'll have his head." Well, soon the walls of the palace were lined with heads. She ran like the wind, like a gazelle, until Hippomenes came to the kingdom. Excuse me. He was a prince. He was not a fool. He saw her running. He knew she was rich. He thought, "I need help." So he too went to Aphrodite and asked for her help. And she loved making mischief. So she said, "Let me whisper a plan in your shell idea." The next day, at the race and up ahead, it's getting very dark. Now, this Hippomenes didn't look like a fool, but he must be a fool. Not only was he going to race her with all the evidence before him, but he was going to run with a satchel, a leather satchel over his chest, filled with something. Well, it'd be upon him. And a signal was given, and the two took off running across the golden fields. And soon Atalanta was ahead. And Hippomenes stopped, reached into the satchel, took out an apple, and threw it ahead of her and to the side. And she stopped, and she went over, and she picked it up. It smelled good. "Oh, this is very sweet. Hippomenes, what is this apple that you have waylaid me with?" "I," he said as he passed her by, "have given you a respect you, Atalanta." "Well done," she said. And she took the apple and went running by him again. And when she was outpacing him, he reached in a second time, took out another apple and threw it to the side and ahead of her. And again she stopped and she picked it up. Oh, this is even better. Hippomenes, this apple is really, really good. That, Atalanta, is the apple of friendship. I give my friendship to you. Respect she had, but never hoped. She laughed, and she took off running again, and now they went stride by stride, foot by foot, along with each other, grinning at each other. And then she saw it. She saw the spear. She saw the shadow it cast that marked the finish line, and she remembered she was a go-ahead, no impeding her forward momentum, no hesitation mortal, who would have no roots. And she took off again, and soon was ahead of him. Threw it over her head, and it landed right on the line. What is this? What could you possibly tempt me with that would keep me from stepping over this line? It's the apple of passion. Taste it. No, I want no passion. I want no friendship. I want no respect from you. Take them back. I will take them, and I'll give them back to you. And soon those apples were dancing between them like little moons. And smiling, they stepped over the line together and began a whole new race. All right.
Well, our advertisement was good, right? One of those great stories from everybody? Thank you. So we're a little bit ahead of schedule here today before we take our break. I'd like to saying that Matthew is going, from our group, is going to be in the Portland Grand Slam as a Master Grand Slam. And
Grand Slam Moth. The Moth. Portland Moth Grand Slam.
the Portland Moth Grand Slam. Well, good for Matthew. In fact, is he up here today? Can you see?
I'm here. I'm here if you wanted to ask me anything about it, but it is April 4th, which is a Tuesday.
Okay, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. For those who haven't been here before, to go out and around, the restrooms are just around the corner. And we'll take about 5 minutes. And those of you who are on Zoom can talk amongst yourself or to each other. Also, when we finish the storytelling time tonight, we'll leave Zoom on for a little while so those of you who haven't seen each other in a while can catch up. I'd like to also mention that to help support the South Sound Story Organization, we do have a PayPal account. If you go to southsoundstory.org on the internet, you can pull up our website, and there's a way there to either join, which is $15, or just to send in a donation. It helps us pay the rent on these buildings and a few other things like that. All refreshments that we have, we do pay for ourselves, unless we get a lot of money, in which case then we'll dip into the kitty. So when we come back tonight, we've got 2 new storytellers here that we're really excited to hear stories from. We'll also be here. So we invite you to come back in about 5 minutes, okay? All right, enjoy your time, and we'll ring the bell. Are you muted? All set to go? Okay, our new storytellers here, which we really welcome, and also thank you to all of your classmates. I just looked in there, a lot of names I don't recognize, so a lot of people are watching you tonight, but you're going to do wonderfully. So Leo, would you like to come up and tell a story about love, please? Here's Leo. We'll make sure you're adjusted here. You're good.
Am I visible?
Yeah, you're fine.
Audio okay?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Where to go?
Yeah, everybody hearing me?
Yep.
Great.
From chat.
Hi, my name is Leo. The story I've brought for you today, I suppose, is not so much about the concept of love, but it's a beloved family memory of mine. So that's what I've come to share. The crowd we've got going on, the cast of characters, I suppose, is me, my mom, my dad, my baby sister, and my friend Eli. This is about circa 8th grade for me, I would say. We were all gathered around. We didn't really have much to do. It was the afternoon. And I recalled hearing a story earlier that week that my dad told about a science experiment his family did about like electric pickle. And I decided tonight was the night for that. So we got the whole family together. Everyone's in on this, of course. Title says it all. And we go to Safeway. And when the doors open, these automatic doors, I walk into the grocery store, and what do I see staring right back at me? But the charming eyes of the Van Holten's Big Papa Dill Pickle mascot looking right at me. And I was like, that is the pickle that we're choosing for this experiment. Single serving pickle, by the way. If you want just an odd image in your head, it's a, yeah, whatever, however big you think a single serving pickle is, that's probably about it. So we take that home, weird order, by the way, just one pickle at a grocery store. We take it home, and my mom, she's a little electric fixing for the house. She could fix my fridge, the washing machine, she's pretty good with that. So she brought out this cable, kind of like spliced it, I don't really know how it works, and we brought an extension cord, plugged it into the living room, brought it out onto the porch. At this point, it's the middle of the night, gotta keep it dark so you can see all the electricity in the pickle. And the 5 of us were here, gathered on the porch in the middle of the night. We got 2 nails, jam them right into the side of the pickle, and you sort of attach the wires on either side, and then plug it into the extension cord. And out here in the dark, all of us got down to look at this big Papa Pickle on the ground, and you can see the water, like currents of water, like light up with electricity because the sodium in the brine conducts it. So you can like see it light up. It glows bright yellow, and you can see like sparks within it. Very cool trick, admittedly. It's very fun. It was really a fun thing to see with my family, but the smell that came after was truly horrific. I heard that it smelled, obviously, because it's a pickle that you're plugging into the wall, but this wasn't just any pickle. This was like dill. This was like a strong pickle, and the smell was overwhelming. It was like, you know, an electric fire smell, electric wire, it's like a little bit ozone. Ozone, yes. Yes, ozone coming right at it, and it lasted for 2 more days. Every time you passed by the front door, just a wave of just like sulfur and dill, raw brine right in your face. And although that smell only lasted, oh my God, that smell only lasted for 48 hours. It will always be with me in my heart.
Hey, thank you, Leo. I love pickles too, and I never thought I'd hear a love story about pickles, but here we go. We got a love story about pickles. That's wonderful. Thank you. And Mattie is now going to come up and tell another love story. So please welcome Mattie.
From chat, yay, Mattie.
There you go.
All right, my name is Mattie, and I will be reading or performing a story that I wrote. So it begins with a girl who loved to run barefoot through the grass. This girl would plant flowers in the soil and dance through fields, and she would lay back on the grass and stare into the sky above her. And she thought it was just the most beautiful thing that the world could offer. And she'd lie on the grass and she'd feel the earth beneath her, and she just felt a connection like she had never had before. So she sat there. She was quite lonely. And then one day, as she was laying there and she was looking into the sky, she saw a figure dancing through the clouds. And she squinted. She said, there's no way there's a person up there. But sure enough, there was a beautiful woman dancing and twirling and spinning through the clouds. And she looked up and she was so curious. And so she asked her, girl in the clouds, what are you doing? How did you get up there? And the girl looks down and she says, how did you get down there? And the girl from the grass says, well, gravity, of course. And the girl in the cloud says, gravity? What in the world is gravity? I've never heard of such a thing. And so the girl from the grass explains gravity, and the girl in the clouds continues asking questions, and they go back and forth like this for a very long time. And eventually it turns more casual, and they continue talking, and they stay there talking for hours and hours, and night begins to fall, and the girl decides that she will lay on the grass and stay with the girl from the clouds the entire night. And so they talked, and they spent their days like this for a very long time. They would dance together, one in the clouds and one on the grass, and eventually they fell in love. And their love was so strong that despite the distance between them, it was the most powerful thing that they had ever felt. But one day, the girl from the grass woke up and she felt raindrops on her cheeks, and she looked up at the sky and she realized that the girl in the clouds was crying. And she asked her, "My love, cry?" And the girl from the cloud says, "I cry because I can never truly be with you. We are separated by the sky between us, and it breaks my heart, because if there is one thing that I know, it is that gravity bound you to the earth." And the girl in the clouds thought about this for a while, and then she replied and said, "If there is one thing that I know, is that my love for you has no bounds." And she stood up, and she decided in that moment that she would fly like a bird, because if a bird can do it, why can't she? So she took a breath, and she began running, she jumped, and she fell. But she didn't give up. She got back up, and she began running again. And she ran faster than she ever could. And she jumped, and she fell once more. And the girl from the clouds continued crying, and the rain just seemed to pour down from her. But little flowers began blooming from the grass. The grass saw this, and so she laid back on the grass once more. And she began to pray. And she thought, "Please, please, whoever is listening, let me be with the one that I truly love. Help me get to her." And she stood up once more. She took one more deep breath. She ran faster than she'd ever run. And she jumped. And for a moment, she stayed there, elevated. And then she felt the grass below her push her higher into the sky. And she flailed her arms and she flapped like a bird, and she was panicking, but she felt so supported, being lifted higher and higher and higher. And she lifted her arms up, and she felt a hand grasp her. And a warmth filled her body like she had never felt before. And she embraced the one she loved for the first time. And they began to dance through the clouds, barefoot, together in harmony.
Thank you, Mattie, for your story. And we'd like to also thank Professor Chamberlain for having all of your students on Zoom and also for sending some down. We always like to hear stories from new folks around here, some of us who are under 60 years of age. It's really wonderful, so thank you. So we've got a few people over 60 here too who are also great storytellers, and there's one that was one of the first storytellers I ever heard here in Olympia, and I love her dearly. So yes, Billy, I'm talking about you. So would you like to come on up and tell a story, please? Thank you. There you go.
I keep my coat on, though it's cold in here.
Could start the fire for you, but
Oh, no, then I toasty buns. Yes, I am over 65. I am over 75. I'm stop there? Oh, why? I haven't stopped there. I thought about stories about love, and I am in love right now, believe it or not. He's only 6, really old. one of my son-in-laws calls him my boy toy. That's not what I'm going to talk about. Too bad. That's called a teaser. I love ice cream. I love sunshine. I love my grandchildren. I love a lot of things. But I think that word is overused. So one time, I heard, or actually read, a woman named Carrie Ten Boom, who wrote a book about her time in the prison camps in Germany. And she was talking about how she came to love one of her captors. Only she didn't say love. She said, I can't say I love him. She said, I have unconditional warm regard for him. I like that better than love. It's just too long to say. So we'll make it a four-letter word and say love. It's just love. And it comes in all kinds of unexpected and unimaginable ways. The first time I remember unconditional warm regard is came from a little black dog, very cleverly named Blackie. Now, Blackie could wag a tail like you wouldn't believe, and he would get so excited when he saw anybody. He was a stray, and I fed him, and of course, then he stayed. And he would come to the back door, and he would lie in front of the door. And when somebody would come, he'd start wagging his tail, and get up, but he wouldn't move away from the door. He'd just stand there. Now, my grandfather lived with us, and my grandfather had a very special relationship with animals. That relationship meant the animal provided something, and Granddad fed it. But if it didn't provide anything, like he didn't just have a dog to pet it or to love it, it had to be useful. Well, poor old Blackie, he wasn't useful for anything except wagging his tail and loving you. And standing in front of the door, or lying in front of the door. Well, we loved Blackie. Blackie chased cars. Blackie got hit one time, lost an eye, broke his back leg, but his tail never stopped wagging. I went away to college, leaving Blackie, and having known that my grandfather had kicked him off the porch more than once, now this poor old dog walked around, with one eye and a limp, couldn't chase cars anymore, but he could still wag his tail like crazy. I was away at Seattle University, and I got a letter from my grandfather. And he said, the old dog is gone. He's probably sitting in front of the gate, and people are having to step over him to get into heaven. But if you ever need anybody to speak on your behalf, have them talk to Blackie, because he would say, when I was hungry, she fed me. When I was lonely, she petted me. It was a most loving letter. The next time I experienced that kind of unconditional warm regard was when I was working at St. Michael's Church. And I had what would you call him? He was a mentor, a young priest. And I was doing all kinds of things I'd never done before. And I wanted to thank him. I wanted to do something for him. Well, he used to go to Seattle quite often, and every time he went, he'd bring something back and share it with me. And this time he brought the most beautiful version of the Jerusalem Bible, which was my favorite. And it had those crinkly little pages that, you know, you could almost see through. It had a beautiful brown leather cover. It was really as smooth as a baby's bottom. And it had his name printed in gold on it. I mean, it was really a lovely book. And he also brought these tabs, plastic tabs. Now, I don't know what you know about Catholics. They don't know much about the Bible. I mean, they know some, but these tabs have the names of the books of the Bible on them. And so you put them on there, and you could go right away to something. You didn't have to think, where the hell is that? You could just open it right up. So I thought, well, this is something I could do for him. He showed me the Bible, told me how happy he was to have it, and it was my favorite translation. So I thought those stickers were such a good idea. I said, you know, I have some time. I'll go in the other office, and I'll put those tabs on for you if that's okay. Oh, he said, that'd be wonderful. So I went in and I started, you know, and I had to separate all the pages. And I got from Genesis all the way almost to the book of Revelation. Not quite. Until I realized that I had stuck 2 pages of 3 John together. You can't unstick that stuff. I didn't know what to do. You know, I didn't know what to say. I ruined your book. I'm sorry. I'll buy you another one. Just as I was trying to figure out what to do, and pretending like I didn't know, and maybe he'd never get to 3 John, and he would never know. But then he came in, and I said, Father, I'm really sorry, and I was almost in tears. I said, I've ruined your brand new Bible. And he looked at me and he said, you couldn't ruin anything if you wanted to. And he smiled and he looked at it, and I showed him where it was. And I watched for some kind of disappointment or anger or frustration or all of the things that I thought would be there. What I got was unconditional warm regard and a really lovely memory. And the last one I'll tell you about is my friend Diane. Whether you want to be loved or not, Diane's going to love you. And she's a follower. Well, she's a leader, first of all. She's now a Roman Catholic woman priest. Kind of an anomaly. Not kind of, really. But she spent a lot of time learning about St. Ignatius of Loyola. The 14th century. He has quite a story himself. And he wrote it down, and people still follow it today. And it's an amazing experience of turning around what I was taught, and maybe some of you were taught too, about loving God, that's our job, and we better get on with it. And St. Ignatius had an experience where that's what he was going to do. He was going to be the strongest, most powerful, wonderful lover of God that ever was. Well, he got knocked off his horse, literally, broke his leg, and his leg grew back crooked, and he was so vain that it had them break it again so that he could wear, tights and he wouldn't have this yucky looking leg. But anyway, his thing was what happened in that time of conversion for him. He realized that it wasn't him loving God, it was God loving him. And one of the things he said is that love is action. You can't say you love, you have to act love. Well, Diane does that in spades. And one of the ways she does it, she'll hug you to death, whether you want to or not, and that we kind of have had some discussions about. But she's always looking for a way to let you know that she's thinking about you. Sometimes it's going to a yard sale and buying something that she thinks you'd like. Sometimes it's feeding you. She's Polish descent. She has magnificent banquets with Polish food and feeds everybody in the country. But the thing that she does that has always struck me is that when you've been visiting with her at her house and you go to leave, she walks out to the car with you, all the way to your car, gives you another hug. You think she's going to get in the car with you because, she just doesn't want you to leave. And when you finally get in the car and get the door closed and the car started, you look up and there she is on her porch, no matter what waving with unconditional warm regard. So you find lovers everywhere. And I hope you all have some in your life.
Thank you, Billy. Let's see. Mitch isn't signed up, which I thought was going to tell tonight, but he's not on Zoom here tonight, is he? You speak up, Mitch. So see, we've got a great variety of storytellers here, from new ones to more experienced ones. And I really appreciate what everybody's done to keep the hour filled up. And I think Bret always has a good story about Mash Newton, right? Nasrudin. There you go. I'll get it right after a few more tries. So, Bret, would you like to tell us a little story about Nasrudin?
Sure.
And then I think Tobey is going to maybe have a story to tell too before we quit for the night.
In case you don't know who Mullah Nasrudin is, he is actually a historical person who was born in Turkey and was considered a Muslim holy man and wise man, and is used by many Muslims around the world today as a way to teach, to provoke, to think, and to help children understand the world. So I'll give you an example of two stories about Mullah Nasrudin. So Mullah Nasrudin, when he was a young man, he saw an attractive young lady and he decided to court this young lady. And they spent a lot of time together. And after about a year of this, the young lady's father was getting a little concerned. So he went up to Mullah Nasrudin and he said, "Young man, I need to know, are your intentions to my daughter honorable or something else?" And Mullah Nasrudin looked at him and said, "I didn't realize I had a choice." Now, you may have heard a similar story like that. I have done some research into these stories about the wise fool, and I find them popping up again all over the world in all different places. Another day, another time, I'll tell you the story of how that came to be. But I have another story about Mullah Nasruddin. One day, on his way to the mosque, he was not a particularly wealthy man, so he's standing there. It's winter and it's cold. It gets cold in Turkey, and he's there in his thin coat, and one of the richer members of the community walks up, and he's got a nice thick jacket on, and he feels very comfortable and warm in his coat. And so he says to Nasruddin, Nasruddin, you must be freezing to death. And Nasruddin says, well, since I can't afford any other clothing, I have to be content to be cold. And so those are a couple of stories about Mullah Nasruddin. Do you want to hear anything else? There's another famous place that is famous for this kind of wisdom, and that's called the city of Chelm, which is in Eastern Europe. And the story about Chelm, if you don't know, was that after the Lord created the earth, he needed to send the souls down to populate the world. So he called his angels together, and he said, okay, I want you to distribute these souls evenly around the world. So he had one angel carry a bag of artists, and another angel carry a bag of architects, and another angel carry a bag of politicians. And so they all took off, and they went around the world, scattering these souls so that they would develop into humanity generally all around the world, and there would be no one concentration in one place. Well, he had finished handing out the bags of souls when he realized there was one bag left, and this was the bag of fools. So he looked around. All of the angels had gone. There was sort of there. So the Lord called them over and says, I have a special job for you. You're promoted. You're now officially an angel. Here, you take this bag of fools and be sure to scatter it evenly all around the world. So the angel shouldered the bag, very proud that he had been chosen for this job, and he took off. And as he was flying over the Caucasus, because he was new and young and a little bit inexperienced, he flew too close to the mountaintop, and a mountaintop tore the bag a little bit. So as he's flying over Eastern Europe, a whole bunch of these souls fall out into one place. And they land there, and they sort of recognize each other, and they say, well, good, we're here, let's form a city. And they set up and they form a city, and they have many, many, many adventures. And I'll give an example of a couple of them. Well, of course, being Jewish, they wanted to have a temple. And so they get together and they accumulate the wood and the bricks and stuff and the nails. And so you have Samuel on one end of the building, and he's nailing in nails to the boards. And on the other end, you have Sasha, and he's nailing in the boards to the temple, to the building. And so nail throws it away. So Samuel says to Sasha, what are you doing? Why are you wasting the nails? And Sasha says, well, the head is on the wrong end. And Sasha says, you dummy, those are for the other side of the building. So this gives you an idea of what kinds of things went on in the village of Chelm. So maybe another time I'll tell you more stories. In the meantime, remember, nobody is without a sense of purpose. Wise fools have something to teach us. Thank you.
I always like to hear about hell. So, Toby, did you have a story you wanted to tell? Okay, so Toby's going to be getting a cleanup here tonight. Will be our last teller for the evening. Thank you, Toby.
I gotta say, I love the dill pickle. Sorry, that's awesome. And Mattie, yours is just beautiful, so creative. Oh, and actually, Billy, I want to hear more of the, your teaser part of your story. Oh, today we're talking about love. And definitely food is one of my favorite things. There's something else. And of course, Bret. But there's another love that I have, and it is fishing. Fly fishing. I just love it. I got into it about 10 years ago when Bret and I came back to the United States. I got my rod, and I got my reel, and my brother, who lives in Federal Way, he's an expert. So he is showing me, okay, Toby, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. Load! You can feel the load, the rod. Well, I do that, and the line is just right behind me. Cast it out! And then the line gets caught in the trees. Toby, you gotta join a club. And you know what, guys? I found the perfect club. It was called the Real Fly Girls. It was a group of women who were into fly fishing. And they were so kind. And they gave me all kinds of lessons. I wasn't quite hopeless. So Robbie, she decided to organize a fly fishing trip. And she actually invited me. And these women are very good fly fishers. I mean, they're very accurate. And she says, hey, Toby, I tell you what, you want to come with us to the river? Sorry, I can't tell you because it's a secret. I said, yeah, I'd love to go. And to this place, we had to take a ferry, and it's a teeny town, and there's this beautiful river, and it's just like National Geographic, because the lake trout that live there, the lake salmon that live there, swim up this river, and they turn red. They turn bright red with that green head. It's just beautiful. So we're in this river, we have the guide, and he says, we're gonna go to a real special spot on this river. So we get out of the boat, there are about 4 of us swimming, and he says, but only one of you can fish this spot. It's a hidey hole. I'm going, okay, how are we gonna do it? To be fair, okay. Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors. I won. But then the pressure, right? Because they're all looking at me, and I've got to get the line in this little teeny ivy hole right underneath these roots of a tree. So the guy says, okay, and he takes all my line, and in front of me is this whole spool of line. All right. When I say go, you just have to keep on putting that line in the water, okay, Toby? And you cannot scream. I'm not going to scream. So I'm ready, go. And I'm doing this with the line, and I can see my little fly floating lazily down until it gets to that one hidey hole spot right by the roots of that tree. And there it is flying, and wham, this huge mouth just takes it down. Okay, Toby, strip the line, not your clothes. Okay, wait. I'm stripping. And sure enough, there's this huge trout that he takes up into the net. We all look at it, and then we release it. I was so proud. That evening, we go to the local pub, and everyone's sitting around, and we're talking all about fishing and who caught what, how big, how heavy, and it was my turn to buy the beers. So I go up to the bar, and I'm ordering, and then there's a table, and the guides are there, and they're all talking. Okay, who gets the hidey hole tomorrow? Only one of us can do it, and yeah, that fish will go right back into that hole. Oh my gosh, it's almost as if they have trained this fish. So I went back and told the girls, and they were laughing their heads off. So the next day, we all go out to the river, and we're on our own this time, no guide. And the river is just beautiful. It's so crystal clear. And I decided I'm going to fish on my own. So I go upriver, and I see the spot. And again, it is a still water right underneath these gnarled roots right on the bank. And I just was looking at it, and then I saw this incredible swirl. Oh, there was a big one in there. So I remember what I was taught yesterday. Put some line out, and there it floated down, and sure enough, a huge trout just grabbed it, took it down, and I'm stripping the line, and I see it is huge, and then I got roots cut off. And as I'm reeling in my line, you know, I'm looking over at the rooted tree that I really had this fish, and looking at me though was this deer, just kind of taking it in. And I looked at the deer, and the deer looked at me, and I figured, okay, that's fishing. But fishing is more than just catching the fish. It's just enjoying what's around. And that is what I love. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Makes me want to go to the, I almost said the name of the river. No. You're off. You can't guess anymore, but that is not even close, I'll tell you right now. So I think tonight we've had a great story time. Jerry, thanks for opening. Sandra for being our featured teller. Mattie and Leo for being our guest tellers and our new folks. And Professor Chamberlain for bringing everybody. Bret for your work on the tech stuff, and also for Nasruddin stories, which I always love to hear about. And Billy for your unconditional warm regards for everybody else who is here. Toby for your exciting story about fishing. And we'd like to send our unconditional warm regards to everybody who is in the audience tonight, all 40 of you out there in the Neverworld. And please go to southsoundstory.org, look at our website, and we'll be back on March 8th for another storytelling event right here in the Harbor House and online. So thank you again. Chat among yourselves. We'll leave the Zoom up for that.
Wow, that was incredible, everyone. Fantastic. So someone is recording this, and where can we get a copy of this recording? Perry, do you know?
I think whoever invited you to this, probably Tobey Anderson is generally the best source, because I think it probably was her husband.